And at the center of this book is a story about a scientific renaissance. And the fact is that, much to my surprise, long before Timothy Leary came along in the 60s, the 60s is kind of branded psychedelics for most of the culture and perhaps many people in the room. But long before Timothy Leary had his first transformative experience by a pool in Cuernavaca on psilocybin in 1960, there had been a decade of really fertile research, trying to figure out what these amazing molecules were and could do, and then trying to understand how they might be applied therapeutically. And so they went through a whole, set of changing paradigms, and they gradually kind of coalesced around the idea that these drugs could be very useful in treating addiction. There was a lot of work on alcoholism in the 50s, and in treating depression and anxiety, and there was, I don't think people realize, but there were 1,000 peer-reviewed papers about LSD and psilocybin before 1965, and there were something like 40,000 research subjects, 6 international conferences on LSD. It was considered a psychiatric wonder drug among many people in the psychiatric establishment. And this research died, basically. It faded out after the counterculture embraced psychedelics, and there was a moral panic around them and lots of horror stories, many of which we've all heard, and I believed, frankly, most of them when I started this work. And then the research resumed, and this happened. I mean, I'm making it sound way too simple. It took a lot of work to get it off the ground, to get the FDA and the DEA to approve it.
There's people here that were involved in that.
And there are people in this room who helped push it forward against tremendous odds. But beginning in the late 90s, you once again had this resumption of serious, and I'm talking about rigorous, controlled trials of psilocybin especially, because LSD was still, for 2 reasons. LSD was much more controversial, much more likely to run into a political buzzsaw than psilocybin, which most politicians have never heard of. And also that, frankly, LSD takes too long. You'd have to pay overtime to all your therapists if they're guiding an LSD trip, whereas psilocybin kind of fits into the workday pretty well. So there have been a series of trials, and they've been very, there's a lot of really good data. It's still preliminary, and there are many more steps. There's more phase 2 trials, there are phase 3 trials that have to happen before the FDA will approve it. But that's the path we're on. Mm-hmm. And by the way, that path was marked by MAPS, the organization, and Rick Doblin, who made a study of the... he went to Harvard to get a PhD in government or administration, so he could really understand what you had to do to get a drug through the FDA. And he charted the path that both psilocybin and MDMA are on right now.
We're getting psychedelic here.